So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find in a layer of understanding of the spring feast, autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As then we find the news from the BRICS post, the situation is becoming a whole lot more faster than we ever thought. China, the new leader of the world's market, is obviously working very diligently. In Thailand and also Vietnam, they are also engaged in doing trade with China. Extremely important understanding this topic because the Pacific is lining up and they are coming for worldwide trade. So then as we read then 11th chapter of Daniel, we find then what the prophet told us very importantly regarding then the kingdom of the south then becoming strong. 11:5, and this must take place next year, where then many companies of China will obviously having a show time and they will demonstrate their power. And during this time many deals will be made in Congo, where then later when we find then the Soviets coming down and then crushing war and organizing the place for trade. At the moment, the link of United States and then Congo is none other than understanding this particular point, where then there is from 24 to 27 months left then for the ending of the U.S.A.'s rule. How can we do this? How can we understand this topic? When we read then the 11th chapter of Daniel, we must understand that prior of the destroying or the destruction of the holy cities, these areas of the holy instructions were tested. Let's then explain what goes on. Prior of the ending of the holy cities in 1009, the instructions were tested to the utmost. They were tested in the first level, and we are during the time of the restoration period, where then the second level is then ending of this age. We find these very simply because when you read then the covenant, the 11th chapter, then comes the despised one making a deal with the covenant. This means United States making a deal later with Israel, and then for this to take place, we must understand that Israel is yet regarding themselves doing the first holy service rather than the second. In order for the United States to maintain itself, they must build this computer system, then to be involved with the Chinese system. It's extremely simple and not complicated. If China takes over the world without then the United States inclusion, later would not make sense then for the covenant and the despised one to join up themselves and further deceit. This is very simply when you read then the 11th chapter of Daniel. You find then the relationship then is again built up for deceit. At the moment, if China takes over without the computer built by the United States, then it would not make sense for later then the covenant being mixed up again with the despised one, then to deceive even further for a time. So then, the only way you can establish the relationship of the first section, the section regarding at this time, when then China is linking up the rest of the world with itself, and the Chinese yuan becomes then the most important monetary exchange, the United States must build a computer so then the entire world system is imputed in it. This means then freighting, means central banks of the world and local banks linked up at the same time. This is crucial for the United States to do it. Brazil obviously is very far behind, and then we understand we are the lowest country in the BRICS. As we can read today, the BRICS post, you find then the Soviets already joining up with the Indian military forces, is starting up then on the 8th of this month, then joining up. You find then many news from the 8th, and you find also from the 9th and the 10th until today. You have to read then this information every day, and then the military exercise is going to start in this month on 18th. That's when then the forces are going to be joined then for 10 days. So then next year then the Indian government is coming to Brazil because we are going to host the BRICS visit, and the nations are going to gather and find out why Brazil is so far behind. It's very obvious. If we don't read, if we don't learn English, if we are not studying the holy instructions, we become then the stupidest country in this world. And then we have COTAN to help United States then to build this computer. It is crucial having this computer built prior of. When we understand the building of this computer in the next 27 months, then you can link United States with the covenant later. Then we understand why then the Congo will then be straightened out. The only country that is able then to straighten out Congo is the Soviet Union, the Kingdom of the North, as you can read in the 11th chapter of Daniel. Then the Kingdom of the North coming down and then put in order what's going on in DRC. Later you find more information, and not only these, but then you find at some point the exactor is China, then laying their plans for Congo starting next year. You have to start reading then the China Daily News and then the BRICS Post and the holy instructions of then the 11th chapter, so then you can understand. The nations, they are yet during the time of the deceit, from 1009 to 2009, and people are then obviously refusing to change themselves. They have then got used to so being ignorant, thinking that the paper money is going to save their lives, where then the world is changing for the virtual monetary system, and U.S. must make sure every area of banking throughout the world is then put in a computer. So then they can watch these percentages, as it was explained before, so the United States can link itself later when the first holy city then is built via then what the prophet said then on the land of Cush in Sudan. Then you understand then the covenant, you understand the true believers in the Messiah, and then later United States making another covenant with Israel of their own, and then proclaiming the seed. So then these are very important. At the moment, the most important is building the computer, because the U.S.A won't last very long. As you can understand the BRICS post, you can understand also then Bitcoin. You can simply include investment as the same system as the Bitcoin, as the Chinese yuan. They are very smart, because introducing then investments via the same system, you can invest and receive via the same signal. This then protects you because of the private rights of owning a computer, where the central banks have no link with them. That's why the United States has the task of building this computer and establishing links with China and every central bank of every nation. From then on, then every nation's central bank, they link themselves up with their own banks. So the situation is very dire, and it's very complicated at the moment. If we don't do this, then China rules by itself. The only problem is then United States can't make a link with a covenant later, because there is no sense for the United States to be linked up with Israel via the first covenant if we don't understand the importance of Congo. Not only this, but you find in Israel trying to build the third temple, and they won't. The only portion of the first tabernacle services, instructions of Moshe in the desert, was then the tabernacle of the desert placed on Mount Moriah. Then later comes then the retrieval of the United States, but for these, first they must build the computer. So then virtual trade then can be obviously completed. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.